Welcome to the New Mom Talk podcast, your go-to podcast for evidence-based answers to your burning questions about parenting. Join us as we dive into commonly Googled topics and hear from experts and real moms. Let's navigate parenthood together, one question at a time. Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about medications that are offered to baby at a hospital. So we're going to break them down. We're going to talk about what each one is, what each one does, what the benefits, what the risks are. Basically, everything that you want to know that you probably are too overwhelmed to even think about when you just literally had a marathon and had a baby. So all that being said, today our guest is Carly.
Thanks for having me. I am Carly. I am a mom to two little boys. I'm located in New Jersey. I work in the hospital as well as a birth center outpatient, and I have my own business. That's kind of why I'm here. But my passion to start this business came from working in the hospital. So caring for mom and baby like a couple hours, or even like minutes after birth until discharge home, which is sometimes a couple of days to, 2 to like 4 days usually. And then my passion for this business started because Fourth Trimester Foundations is what it's called. It's a postpartum nurse support business, education, one-on-one support, just community. And my passion for this started when everyone was asking the same questions postpartum. And I'm like, why can't this be something that like people are taught? Like, why does this have to be a surprise? And there's so much during pregnancy to learn. And postpartum is kind of an afterthought sometimes. And that's okay. But there, for people who want to know more, like I can provide that. So that's kind of why I'm here.
I should just see me nodding my head like, yes, yes, yeah. So true. Like postpartum is just something that no one plans for, no one thinks about.
Right.
You
Right.
also have no idea what to expect because nobody talks about it, right? It's like everybody talks about the pregnancy and then, oh my God, when the baby is here, it's going to be this, 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 and that. They only talk about like the lack of sleep. But other than that, there is no preparation, no list of resources. So, another topic.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's go ahead. We'll briefly go over each medication. If you can share what the purpose of each medication that's offered is, what the risks are, why it's recommended. So kind of let's just dive into each one. And then, of course, can you decline to accept a medication and why would you want to do that if that is the case? Right? So just really breaking it down on like, let's learn about all those things that come in.
Yeah. All great questions. So there's three medications that are offered to babies, to newborns immediately after birth. Hopefully, this is something that is offered and not just given. Every medication that is given in the hospital should be given with informed consent, even Motrin and Tylenol, if that's something you want. Knowing informed consent means someone is explaining the medication to you or the procedure, and you can talk about the risks, benefits, the alternatives, ask questions, and informed consent means you have the option to say no. So this should be a standard. And I know that's not always a standard, especially in birth and postpartum, but all of these three medications. So there's two injections and one is an eye ointment. So the two injections, the first one is vitamin K. That's one injection. In the newborn, it typically goes in like the thigh, like the outer aspect of the thigh. That's like the most muscly part of the baby. And then in the other leg should be a hepatitis B if that's something you want. That is the one that's a vaccine. The others are just medications. And the third one is erythromycin eye ointment. So that is like a goopy eye Vaseline consistency that goes into the eyes. So again, all of these will be offered or just given, hopefully not just given, but knowing about them ahead of time, listening to this podcast will give you a great kind of like inside scoop on what these medications are. So you can kind of do your own research and see if this is something you do want. And you can have kind of the reasons to back it up. Like, no, I'm going to say no for this one because I'm not just like, no. Having the reason no is a complete sentence, of course. But if you want some, they might kind of prod. Some hospitals are great, others have a tough time hearing the word no. So I'll start with the one medication, the first one. hepatitis B. So that is like a zero point 0.5 milligram dose. And this is a medication that's given in people and parents who consent to prevent hepatitis B. And it's typically given to newborns who are above like 4-ish pounds. So a little preemie or a baby born early or a baby that's really small. It won't be standard to be given. And the reason to receive it is to prevent serious liver failure in the newborn or later on in life. I guess if a newborn does get hepatitis B, it is sexually transmitted. So that's not something your newborn is doing at the moment. It's spread like sexually or through blood or like saliva or through birth if given vaginally. But if a newborn does get it, there's like a 90% chance it could cause like a serious liver issue. So that's kind of the reason it is suggested or going to be offered to the newborn. The risks with both of the injections, there's some differences for each, but for injections in general, the soreness at the actual site where it's being given. And sometimes there is a little bit of like a vaccine reaction. Sometimes in newborns, it's hard to tell because they were just born. So it's hard to know like what is what. They don't know what's going on in the world. You just they are just born. That was a traumatic experience for them. And then you poke each of their legs, like right away. It stinks. So it's hard to know what's what. Sometimes it can make them cry, make them upset for like, a few seconds. So sometimes even just like a couple seconds of crying can make them a little extra tired. And then the tiredness can make it difficult to feed, especially if breastfeeding, because breastfeeding, they can be a lot more tired doing. So those are kind of the risks to getting the medication. And another one with the hepatitis B, like if your lifestyle isn't one that would make you really at risk for hepatitis B, is it necessary? Or is it necessary at all if you don't want it, right? Based on your lifestyle, kind of thinking about the risk status of contracting hepatitis B yourself during pregnancy and early postpartum. So if hepatitis B isn't something that you'd like to receive, the alternatives would be not getting it. That is an option to not receive it, or delaying it, waiting until the pediatrician appointment if you want to. It's the first of 3 doses. So that's recommended by the CDC. So the first one they say at birth, the next one I think they say a month after the first one. And then the last, I forget when they say the last one is, but it's like a series, the first of 3. So if declining one would mean it either would be you not get the other ones or push back receiving the other doses. So that's hepatitis B. And that's the one that is the vaccine. The other 2 are just medications. Doesn't mean they're better or worse, but that's just the category they fall into. So, do you have any questions on the hepatitis B? I don't know if I was saying like too
No,
many things.
no, I think this is great. It breaks it down, why you would want to get it, why you
Yeah.
would consider not getting it. So again, very basic in the sense of what your lifestyle is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested in learning about the other two, especially the little like the eye jelly or
Yeah.
Vaseline style
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. I know it's weird. All right. So the next one I'll talk about is vitamin K. This is the biggest hot topic one. I'll go into all the reasons why, but this is the one that if you do get any of the medications, will likely be the one your hospital or your pediatrician will encourage the baby to receive. Vitamin K basically is a vitamin that we need as humans to clot blood. So in newborns, it can prevent a really rare but possibly deadly brain bleed in the first 6 months of life. So I know that all sounds really scary to say, like, it's like, of course I'm going to get it, but there are some risks to it. And there's been a lot of research done on it. So I'll kind of talk about why. So there's could be 2 different kinds of bleeding in like the brain or in the stomach. And it's not something that is in the risk status as hepatitis B. It's one of those things like they can't make vitamin K on their own in the very beginning of their life or the first 6 months. So the vaccine is something that they push, especially if you have a boy and you're wanting to circumcise the baby, or if the baby needs any kind of surgeries in the early months. This might be something that pediatrician will say, like, the baby does need this. So that's kind of something to know, that it's the one that's pushed the most. It's typically given again in the other leg, the opposite one, if you receive both. one time. It's not a series, and it releases slowly. So the AAP, the Academy of Pediatrics, says it should be given within 6 hours of birth, which is pretty early on. But I think up to 3 days, like 72 hours, it's still the similar efficacy. So it doesn't have to be a decision that's made like immediately. So if with breastfeeding though, with formula feeding, a lot of the vitamin K, like deficiency bleeding issues are really not there. With breastfeeding, it's something that isn't transferred through breast milk as well as it is through formula. So if you are breastfeeding, that's something to consider more as well if you aren't doing formula. The risks of receiving it are the kind of the same generally, like the pain at the site, just uncomfortability, being a little extra tired after. I didn't mention the last time, sometimes there is a little bit of bruising like at the area, visible or not, and a little bit of like bleeding, like drops of blood. It isn't something that goes into the vein, so it's not that risk, but still just bleeding in general. And also, this is the one medication that contains preservatives. So, hepatitis B typically doesn't. But vitamin K is the one that the default version of it contains preservatives. So, is like a preservative free version at most hospitals that you can ask for if the preservatives aren't your jam, which I feel like in most people they aren't. Like, why would I opt for them? It's kind of like a secret menu item. Like, you don't know that the preservative free option is there. So if the preservative additive is something that you don't want, you can ask if they have a preservative free option.
What a bummer that they don't just tell you which one do you want, right? Is
It's
it more of
cost.
like a
It's
limit? Okay. I
it's
was
all
gonna say, is
about
there a
money.
limited quantity?
All about money. Yep. Everything in the hospital is about money, unfortunately. It's sad.
Isn't that the medical system? Ugh.
Yes, it is. It is. There is with vitamin K. So there were a lot of studies done about this medication because it is so like life-saving when done well. But there was a study in like the 1990s that showed there was a link between this and leukemia. And there was another study there is a black box warning actually for the medication when given through an IV, which that's not the way it's given in the hospital. So I think sometimes it can be kind of be construed as the risks being really high. That study in the 90s was actually shown not to be true. Like the link to leukemia isn't there, and the black box warning isn't for the way it's given. So it's hard to sift through all this information because I almost feel like sometimes you need like a medical degree to really fully understand it, right? And it's you want to do right by your baby and they can't speak up for themselves. You have to kind of like speak for them. So some alternatives is not receiving it. Of course, that's always an option. There is some oral versions, like actual drops, not the shot. It's not something that's FDA approved here in America. Who knows what the reasons are behind that. And there's also an option if you are exclusively breastfeeding to take higher doses of vitamin K, like orally yourself, like actual supplements, rather than, giving it to baby initially. So that there are options, but just know this is, again, like I said, the hot ticket one. Some pediatricians that I know in New Jersey don't actually accept patients if they don't receive this medication, which seems really twisted to make that like I'll only be your baby's doctor if. So that's just something to like put out there and consider. I just want to make sure everyone's kind of upfront about what the medication is. It's not
Is
even clear.
that
Go
is
ahead.
that only a thing in New Jersey, or can that be
I
something
don't know.
that's
I don't think so. There is a really good, I would encourage, you might put it in the show notes or whatever, but evidence based birth is they have great resources on vitamin K and the next medication, or erythromycin. So they have a really good fact sheet that you can easily digest. It's like a one pager, the risks, benefits, alternatives, kind of like what I'm discussing here. It seems like it's definitely more than just in New Jersey because it is a national thing through the FDA and through the CDC requiring medication in air quotes to be given to all newborns.
and then for the drops, is that something that is available in the hospital? It's just not FDA approved, or it's not even an option at all.
You have to bring it yourself.
Here's
Yeah, you have to bring it
here's the
yourself.
medication I brought
Yeah.
for my
Yeah.
child. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like it's something you have to bring yourself. And some pediatricians won't accept it as like they received it because it's not FDA approved. So yeah. Yeah, it is. It's oh goodness. It's a very good way to put it.
But is it, sorry, I know that like picking your brain a lot on this. So
No,
is it
I'm here.
approved in other countries, like let's say Canada or in Europe? Is it something that's given there?
It seems like it is in other countries in Europe. The erythromycin for sure is something that a lot of other countries don't suggest giving. I don't know the actual facts on, I'd have to look that up on vitamin K, like what other countries are okay with the oral versions, but I know a lot of European countries, that's a lot of times where they come from, the actual drops themselves. So I don't know worldwide what other countries are. I know for the erythromycin, though, but not for this one.
I had no
I had
idea.
no
I had no
idea.
I had
idea.
no idea.
I had no
I
idea.
had no idea.
If you've ever said, I had no idea when it came to your parenting journey, followed by a smile, laugh, or cry, then listen up because this is for you. My name is Kelly, a stay-at-home mom of two wild, crazy, and fun little girls and host of Oh Baby, I Had No Idea, the podcast/YouTube channel. Each week, you'll get to hear my laid-back chats with other moms and dads from around the world as we explore some of our I had no idea parenting moments throughout our pregnancies, births, postpartum, and of course, the joyful chaos that is everyday lives with kids. You'll also get a wide variety of behind-the-scenes looks into some not so often talked about topics that need so much more awareness. If you're looking for something that's entertaining / semi-educational / might just make you feel a little less crazy in your own parenting journey, then this is it. Just type in "Oh Baby, I Had No Idea" in your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube to join us in the fun. See you there.
It's always so fascinating to kind of see how other countries do it,
Yeah.
especially, other countries that you can compare healthcare systems with as far as like Canada, Europe, some European countries. So yeah, I want to know about this next one.
Right, but the mortality rate here in America compared to the other countries that you're referring to is insane. So like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like we're doing it the right way, but here we are.
I know.
Yeah. So the last one is the erythromycin. So this isn't the injection, so it's like lower impact in terms of like the side effects because it's not an injection and it's just kind of sitting on the eyes. It's like a half 0.5% ophthalmic solution. So it's just like really a little thinner than Vaseline, like tiny bits just kind of open up the eye and like in each eyelid, between each eyelid. It's recommended to be given within the first hour of life, which is like right away. They're still wide awake and like staring at their pretty mommy if they're skin to skin at that time. And then you shove the scoop in their eyes. They can be given up to 24 hours. It sounds like fine. It's meant to prevent pink eye. It's not the actual pink eye that we think of that our little kids get and give to the whole house and their whole classroom, but it's just kind of a pink eye type thing caused by different germs. So sometimes it's chlamydia, sometimes it's gonorrhea, and then there's other bacteria that could cause it. But if you don't have chlamydia or gonorrhea and you have a partner that you can trust and nothing else is going on during your pregnancy, and you've had all the screenings, is it really needed? So the reason it's indicated is it's because having like a pink eye type thing in a newborn can cause blindness. While it's really rare, it's still a risk. I think a lot of the people kind of write these things say like the risk isn't zero. So that since the risk isn't zero, we still recommend it. But it can cause irritation to the eye, like the actual eyelid and the eye area, like just extra redness. It can kind of interfere with bonding. Actually, like they can only see around 6 inches in front of their face. So when they have goop on there, they can't even see at all, really. So those are kind of like the two reasonings. Alternatives would be to not get it, especially if it's a C-section and your water didn't break, like really not necessary at all. And if you are screened for STDs and you're in a monogamous relationship, like what's going to happen between then and pregnancy and like the birth. And there's also the option to just wait and see if like irritation does happen to the eye. Getting it treated quickly is okay. It's hard to tell though in newborns. Sometimes they have like the really teeny tiny tear ducts. So they can get like goopy, like sleepies in their eye almost, and it looks kind of infected and gross, but the actual eye is fine. It's just like the tear duct that's infected. So sometimes it's kind of hard to tell. And another option is colostrum. Sometimes colostrum is shown to be like colostrum even more than actual like mature milk has been shown to reduce like the pink eye from like a non-gonorrheal or non-chlamydia type bacteria.
So like just putting a little bit of colostrum on the
a
eye.
drop or two. Yeah, like however you can get it there. And then I know in like Great Britain, Australia, Denmark, Sweden, those countries don't indicate needing to receive erythromycin if the risks are low, like if there is no chlamydia or gonorrhea tested. So, this is the one that's a little more clear cut, I feel like. And like the risk factors type thing are easier to kind of sift through. But all of these medications can be given while skin to skin with the mom or a partner or anyone or support person. Some nurses will be the one giving the medications, the doctors or the midwives will be the ones ordering the medication, or the pediatrician, and the nurses will be the one giving it. So asking like, let's wait a little bit until we have the first latch, or let's wait a little bit until I actually see my baby. Like, you don't have to do it before I've even met my baby, like if I had a C-section, or we can do it while I'm holding baby. Some nurses aren't comfortable with that. So navigate that as you will, but that is an option. And also delaying them, like I kind of alluded to before. It doesn't have to be something that's given within minutes after birth. Like, it's like, let's wipe them down, let's rub them, let's make them cry, let's make them scream, let's put a diaper on them, and let's like poke them. It doesn't have to be something that happens immediately. So putting this on like a birth plan or a postpartum plan or something is huge. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast is also huge, that you can know all of the ins and outs of what the medications are. But having them on a birth plan kind of means you talked about them ahead of time. You talked about it with your OB or your midwife too, just to kind of make sure there's nothing glaring that goes against their policy. Again, policies aren't the law. So just something to discuss, maybe to put your mind at ease a little bit.
So good to know because, yeah, you go in, you don't know very much. You may not be very knowledgeable in the medical field and know what's going to come at you. And then you're just sleep deprived when they tell you need something. You don't really have the time to process, do any research, think it through. So
yeah,
you just go with what's recommended, right?
I know. And that's how a lot of it goes with birth sometimes too. Like, you just kind of go with the flow with birth sometimes, and it doesn't happen the way you were expecting it to. And then your baby's born, you're like, oh, okay, like this will be, I can at least the breastfeeding and the bonding with my baby, like that'll go okay. And then sometimes that doesn't go okay, and it feels so out of control. But just kind of familiarizing yourself with things ahead of time can make a huge difference, just to kind of know the options and know how it can go in the good way and in like a not so great way. Just kind of knowing all of the route.
Yeah. Well, my last question. Any tips, suggestions, or recommendations for anyone listening? I will have all of your information linked in the show notes.
I don't know. I feel like I covered most of it, but I think the biggest thing is to kind of think about things big picture. Like, sometimes things seem so important in little moments, and I think they are really important in those little moments, but trying to like take a step back and thinking about them before you make a decision, or taking a step back and trying to remember that, is this going to be something that I'm stressing about in like 30 minutes, or in 3 days, like, is this going to be something. It's hard in postpartum because, again, you mentioned you're sleep deprived. You Even if you have done this before, you feel like you haven't done this before sometimes. So taking that step back to think and to give it a little bit of time. If it's something like a medication that your team thinks needs to happen right away, they will tell you, like, no, your baby needs this right now. It's an emergency. None of those meds are emergency meds, but it's an emergency. Then it'll be kind of be clear to you. But if you take a step back from your medical team and just turn into yourself, sometimes things become a little bit clearer, or they don't seem as big of deals.
Yeah. I really love the point that you made earlier about how we don't think about that postpartum
Yeah.
stage. So I think being able to kind of include this as part of that postpartum, if you're not doing a birth plan, so that you can kind of have, I guess, a knowledge or an idea of like how you want to proceed with,
Yeah.
baby
For
after.
sure. I'll add one more thing. There are a lot of, sometimes babies need to be separated from mom after birth for a lot of reasons. I won't go into all of those. But the person that does go with baby, usually it's the partner or the support person, knowing we are the ones that get the consent from them for the babies to receive the medication. So a lot of partners have no idea if they want these medications. They're like, well, I don't know. I don't know what these meds are for. I've never talked about it. So like knowing if you're that support person or that partner, knowing if you want these medications and who the pediatrician is. Those are like the two basic things because we need to call the pediatrician to say, hey, your baby was born and we gave them these meds, so having that little bit of information with the partner as well, not just kept close to your chest if the mom, is good to kind of relay or put in a note in your phone and make it a shared note and just say go there if you're not sure, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? A very, very good point about having an idea of who you want your pediatrician to be, because when you're in the hospital, you like don't have all of that information in front of you. So if you can come in with having an idea of who you would like and calling them in advance,
Yep.
that.
Because the hospital typically can't say who recommends. Like, so you can't say, we can say, here's your number for your insurance company, you can call. We usually say, like, ask your mom friends. Like, I can't recommend a pediatrician really because we're just the hospital providing your care. But you also need to have one before you go home so we know where to send your baby's information to.
Well, and like I guess in that case where you mentioned earlier, where some doctors or some pediatricians won't accept
Mm-hmm.
patients if
I
you
know.
refuse a certain medication, you want to make sure that you have that, you know that.
Yeah.
And if they're
Yeah.
even accepting new patients, right? That's another one.
Great question. Yes, that is a lot of good information. Yeah, yeah. So it's wild. The system that we're working with is terrible, but just lean on your support people and really ask other moms who've done this before. Like they can help you out and they can help you sift through some of this stuff. It isn't as bad sometimes as we think it might be.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm really
Yeah,
excited for this episode because, yeah,
yeah,
it's just something you don't really think about, I think, until you're in it. And then you're
yep.
in it and then you forget about it because you've already done it. So
Right, right. Yeah. No, I was happy to talk about this.
thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for our next episode. You can find us on Instagram for more updates and tips. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a review if you like us.